show. With me today, I have Joe Louis Walker, an American musician with several accolades, including being a Blues Hall of Fame inductee and four-time Blues Music Award winner, as well as appearing on Grammy-winning albums such as Blues Summit and also receiving his own Grammy nomination for his album Everybody Wants a Piece. Some of his hits include Too Drunk to Drive Drunk, Pucker Up Buttercup, and Old Time Used to Be. Mr. Walker, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Ryan.
So, something, when I was looking up and doing a little bit of research, I saw that your birthday is on Christmas Day. What was it like celebrating both Christmas and your birthday in your household?
Well, my mother was pretty smart, and she did what she would do was, you know how kids are always excited, they're up all night, and so get up in the morning. So we'd all get up early in the morning or in the, early wee hours and wake our parents up and get our little presents, and then my mother would say, okay, we're gonna have Christmas. We're gonna have Christmas. Now we're gonna have you guys, everybody open their presents and everything, and there's some hot chocolate or whatever, some eggnog, and then later on we're gonna have Christmas dinner. But after about 12 o'clock, we're going to have Joe's birthday party, which is a different celebration. Joe gets the presents. Joe gets to have his own cake. He'll share it with you, and da 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 da. Joe gets, and so she tried to separate the Christmas celebration from my birthday celebration. And when I had my stepson, who I raised since he was one. He's 30 something now. He's born on Christmas too, so I did the same thing for him, so that he could have his own, you know, day within a day. Because when you're born on Christmas, everybody, your birthday is everybody's birthday. It's everybody's holiday.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you got a little bit of like a double dose of excitement going on there. So, I mean,
Yeah,
I think that's really interesting that you kind of like, here's Christmas, now we're going to celebrate Joe's birthday as well with his own cake and party. And that would, to
yeah,
me as a child, that would just be incredible.
yeah. That was one of the smartest things. My mom had to, moms find a way of getting things done. Making include everybody.
Yeah. Another thing that I was looking up is your mother was a big BB King fan, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. When my mom was when her and her generation were young, BB King was pretty much their Michael Jackson. He was like the matinee l- looking guy. Young. He'd been somewhat successful when he was younger, and he was of course a great singer and just a fantastic singer and a fantastic guitar player and an inventor of his style and exciting. When they were young and people come through the rural areas, you don't get a lot of excitement. It isn't like now you can go see a concert every year. BB was one of the guys that had a bus that would go out to places like Little Rock, Arkansas, where my mom was, or Pine Bluff, where cousins were, and coming in, and they'd be waiting for 3, 4 months, for them to get there, and so it would be, it's hard to put yourself in that mindset if you've been through, you got social media and you can see 900 concerts and you can have videotapes of seeing, the latest big Bruce Springsteen concert or whatever. You got, all that. Well, they didn't have that. You seen it and it was over and you'd had to wait to see it next time, and you were lucky if you had a record player. So, she was a big BB King fan, and a big thrill of my life was being able to introduce her to BB. Yeah, it was nice for her.
I was going to ask you about that because I wasn't sure, because I know you collaborated with him on Everybody's Had the Blues, which is from Blues Summit, a Grammy Award winning album. So you got to introduce your mom to BB King. What was her reaction to
Well, she was like a 13-year-old around Michael Jackson. She was just stuck in time. She couldn't talk. And then, then she told me, of course, he was nice. And BB was always gracious. He was always gracious and always kind to me. Let's see, we did Blues Summer together. We did a live album together, which he did, track that me and him did, called Keep On Shuffle. I inducted him into the Kennedy Center Honors. I led the band. I did also the same thing for the Hollywood Hall of Fame. So I spent a lot of time with BB, a lot of time. You know,
Right.
I mean, I'm not talking about a little. I'm talking about like a lot of time. You know, in the studio, on the stage, on the bus. You know, so I would pick his brain, and he was a fountain of knowledge. He was one of a kind. He was there was there never was one before, and there never will be one after.
Right. What is something essential that he's kind of given you that sort of instilled in you that you have taken with you since working with him?
Well, I mean, it was a lot of things I learned from BB, but I think the hardest thing, well, the hardest thing was to listen to sometimes, if we had something, that I didn't want to hear, that I had to hear, and then, just to be honest, he would tell me, Joe, you can think what you want, just don't tell people.
Yeah.
And he was talking about doing interviews. You can think what you want, but just don't really. You cannot find an interview with BB King where he says anything controversial. You will not find an interview with him talking about politics. You will never find one with him talking about race. You will never find one with him talking about sexual issues. You will hear him say what everybody else says, generic stuff,
Mhm.
but you'll never hear his opinion. He just felt as an artist, his job was to be an entertainer, and to bring people joy. And I defy anybody to find two people in a room that say that they didn't enjoy BB King as a person and as an artist.
Yeah, I think the only people who wouldn't enjoy BB King are people who've never heard of him or have never listened to a single thing. Like it's just electric whenever I decide to listen to him. Like I
Yeah.
know it's a fairly it's played a lot, but The Thrill Is Gone is one of my favorites. It's right away. But you have songs exactly like that. Like I was listening to on Sundays I do my shows, 12 to 2,
Hmm.
and I was listening to off JLW Inner City Man, and that's probably my favorite one that you've done. So I guess my question is like I don't know. I just really love the song, but you have like these other hits like Old Time Used to Be, Going to Canada, and a lot of these like when I look through, I think a couple of them came out in 2020. So you're still producing hits even up until today. You've been active since I think like 64, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's just like what a career. And then you do all these collaborations. Like I was watching this video, I think it was Cahoe's New York, and you were performing live with Misty Blues. What is it like working with them?
Oh, that was fun. That was fun because I just love Gina Coleman, the lead singer and songwriter. I just, and I love the group. It's just a good group of people. And I mean, she's an original, and so she's had to take her lumps, and so she hears things and she wants to do things, and I know that feeling. And you hear certain people, and so she heard me in her head on some song, and I called her, and she was surprised that I would do it because a friend of mine knows her, and I said, yeah, I'd do it with you, So it made me feel good because it just wasn't your natural, I do a lot of different things, just not your 12 bar blues. I do a lot of different things with a lot of different people, and that was just one of the things that I did that I really felt like, man, that I'm glad she called me because it sort of took me back to my days in San Francisco where I could just stretch out on the guitar for like 3 minutes and just go crazy, So it was fun.
Yeah. Uh, Speaking of that, on Eclectic Electric, which released 2021, there's 11 songs, and in my opinion, none of them sound alike or the same. For instance, you have Uptown Girl Blues and Gone and Alone, and they're great songs, but they sound completely different. Is it important for you to diversify the styles or sound when you put songs onto an album?
Well, that particular album, I've been waiting to put some of those songs on there, like Uptown, Gone and Alone, because that's a song, it's a cathartic song. I wrote it for my mom and my dad, my family, and for my relatives to play at family reunions, And the chorus is pretty cool, and so I was waiting to put that, but to me, I if you go back to the first record I did. in the early '80s. Coming when I came back from gospel music, when I stopped playing gospel music, and I started back playing, and I'm on High Tone Records, and it's called Cold as the Night. It's just as eclectic electric. You know, it's just as all over the place as eclectic, and I don't do it on purpose. I just do it because that's who I am. You know, but I have done total acoustic blues records. I did Journey to the Heart of the Blues, which was a pretty good record. People thought it was. It won the Blues Music Award about 4 years ago, 3 4 years ago. I've done albums with Branford Marsalis that were up for Grammys. You know, I've done records with Robert Lockwood Jr., Robert Johnson's stepson, that was up for Grammys. I've done records, you know, with Tony Visconti, with John Tiven. You know, it's just all over the. You know, music for me is it's like being a painter. You know, and every so-called genre is just the color of music to me. You know, and so I feel like if I'm a good painter, I'm just not going to use one color. You know, I'm going to use every color in the freaking paint box. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at music. Now I'm known for blues as my mother tongue, which it is. You know, but I would have it to say that, you know, I'm proud of playing with everyone. When I played with Willie Dixon, I'm just as proud of having Flash come play with me when he did. You know, I really am. So I just like good music.
Hey, I completely agree with you on that one. One of the things that you brought up, the gospel, the spirit. So you were in the Spiritual Corinthians, and it was described as being a family and not a band. Could you give some examples or explain why it felt more like a family?
Well, most gospel groups are like a family. You know what happens? You go over each other's house and eat. You know each other's relatives. You sometimes you're married and somebody you're in a relationship with someone the other singer's sister or and one thing, you know, if like in my case I was, you know, I was looking for work, and one of the guys in the gospel group had a great business of building houses, and I started working with him. You know, and that's another thing, they look out for each other. It's just not being on stage. You know, it's like you look out for each other, and I think the greatest thing about a gospel group is that they teach you. You're there with 5 other singers and 4 other musicians, so it's a team. So they teach you, okay, this is your note. Okay, we know that you've got range. You can go from low to high. You can go from you know, maybe a tenor to an alto. We know you can do that, but we've got somebody already that's singing up that high. It's a high tenor. So you're going to be you know, a baritone, so you learn to do that, and maybe in another song you're singing, but you learn that discipline, if you know what I mean.
Right.
You know, that discipline, and that discipline, it's funny when you're around doing anything artistic, because sometimes if you give your input, it could be sort of a criticism to somebody who may be sensitive, and they might go into a shell and not do what they can do normally. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is you get that real support. You know, you find yourself being able to do things that you didn't think you could do, because you've got 9 people behind you that are saying, hey, we believe in what you can do. You know, we knew when you couldn't do things. Now you can do things. Now can you imagine what you'll be able to do in the future? That's what gospel groups do for you, and that's the camaraderie, I think, that it's not in any other style of groups. You know, I mean, some soul groups like the Temptations, which was basically a gospel group in a soul group's body, they sort of had that, you know, until they became famous, and then, you know, when people become famous, then they go start hanging around people who just want to be around them because they're famous, not because they're a good musician or a good person. So you sort of get pulled away from that sort of support system, and you get into another whole can of worms, so to speak.
Right. Uh, that was wow. Okay, that was a fantastic explanation. Yeah, camaraderie is similar to kind of like,
It's like family.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfect. You talked about the Temptations. You got to see them at the Fillmore Auditorium, right?
Yeah, the real, the ones that did. We've seen I think A couple of months after My Girl came out. Yeah,
Wow. And
yeah, I got to see all the those acts, but that was before the hippies came. That was when a
Summer of
gentleman
Love.
named that was before the hippies came to
Yeah.
the Fillmore district. So in that context, by living in the projects, maybe 6, 7, 8 blocks from the film auditorium, I'd go see all the shows. Me and my cousins, we were musicians. We'd had our battle of the bands at the Fillmore Auditorium before the hippies came, and we that was our it was a community place where I could take my grandmother to see a gospel show and things like that. So it was when all the acts who were doing the so-called Chitlin circuit were circulating around. These venues were the top of the line venues that hold 2,000 people. They can make some real money, you know.
Right. So yeah, Charles Sullivan, he acquired the Fillmore Auditorium previously, and then unfortunately he passed away. But yeah, that venue hosted a ton of people like James Brown, Temptations, Little Richard with Hendrix on guitar. And you
Yeah, a lot of
developed
people.
a pretty solid relationship with Sullivan. How did that start out? Were you just doing like the
No,
Battle of
I
the
had a
Bands and you talked to him, and then it just went from there?
Well, no. He was community orientated. He was always looking for talent in young guys, and so me and my cousins, by having talent as well as Sly Stone's brother Freddie Stewart and his group, and they had so many good groups around that had talent. He would let us all have our battle of the bands there, and he would also promote us, sock hops, and he'd promote us, and try to prepare us to be in the big times like the bigger touring acts that he was bringing through. But I also had a good relationship with Bill Graham. I mean, he used me on a lot of things. I and Bill Graham hired many a blues musicians and jazz musicians who a lot of people would have never heard if Bill Graham hadn't put them on those bills. With the younger groups that were coming through or the young groups that were in the Bay Area.
Right. Um, so then what was it like when, the scene started to evolve when the hippies came over?
Well, I wouldn't use the word evolve.
Change, you know what I mean.
I
I'm
say
sorry.
change. When it changed, um, I, I, uh, one thing about it was that it was more geared. Well, just to say it like it is, it was more geared to a white audience.
Right.
So what happened was there was not just a change in the in the ownership or the clientele of the Fillmore because a lot of people still did come, but it was mostly a white audience. What a big change was the neighborhood. They relocated a lot of the people who lived in the neighborhood, and they sort of gutted our neighborhood, the Fillmore district, because they wanted all our Victorian homes. We all had beautiful three-story Victorians, and the powers that be in the city said, "Hey, let's get those people out of those homes and let's move those homes, and we're going to move the people out, and we'll tell them we'll move them back to some nice homes." And of course, they moved us out, but they never moved us back. But they took our Victorians. So, and the cool thing about the hippies was they were able to move into a lot of the Victorians that we had grown up in. And me and my father and my brothers and cousins, we leveled the backyard. We built a garage in a 4-story Victorian. We fixed all the floors, and my dad used to get rent. Well, they took all that from us, and they just moved us out. And then the hippies got to move in because it was cheap. You could get on a 4-story Victorian, you can have freaking 50 people living there,
Yeah.
and everybody paying a little bit of nothing for rent, or like the Grateful Dead house up on Ashbury Street, you could get a whole band or 2 bands living there, and paying a little bit of nothing for rent and being able to rehearse, and so it was a lot of kids who wanted to drop out and cut and grow their hair long and be themselves, coming from Iowa or someplace where it was pretty restrictive to be able to come to the Bay Area and be yourself and listen to the kind of music you want to be here, played by people your age. Well, there was no downside to that.
Right. I'm just gonna take it back just a little bit. I was reading an interview that you did in Blue Blast, and I I love the I love the publisher, but one of the things that they pointed out is the first instrument that you learned to play was the violin. Is that true?
Well, I tried, yeah, and I still got one. I'm looking at it right now. I can make a little noise on it. I never was proficient at it,
Mm.
but yeah, I can make a little noise on it. I never studied it.
Yeah.
So,
Why'd you pick the violin?
well, at that time, I was going to Catholic school from the first grade to the sixth grade, and this must have been about the second or third grade. And at that time, they had music class. And in the music class, they had violin, accordion, a piano, of course, was stationary in the class, and guitar, and one other instrument, I think. I can't remember. And so, of course, everybody wanted to take the guitar, but the guitar was always, if you could check them out like you could a library book, but your parents had to sign for it. If your
Mhm.
parents signed for it, that means you were liable for it. If you broke an instrument, your parents had to pay for it. So, but of course, I want to get my hands on the guitar, but all the time the guitar was always checked out. So I just said, well, this little thing looks like a guitar. It's got four strings. Let me try it. It's just got a bow.
Yeah.
so so I brought it home and I drove my family crazy with it. And they said, oh man, why don't you try? Oh, and they had accordion. So I took that back after a couple of weeks and got the accordion, which I can make a little bit more noise on, but it still wasn't a guitar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then I started playing the piano a little bit, and of course you couldn't drag the piano home. And my heart was on the guitar because that's all the kind of music my dad would play for me was guitar music on his record player. So I was, I never really got my hands on the guitar. I think maybe once I did, but when I got to be when I got out of Catholic school about when I was about 12, we moved from this sort of uh, sort of upscale middle class neighborhood to the projects. My mother and father broke up, so just so happened when we moved to the projects, my mom, the first day I was there, I was like, oh man, because we moved to the Fillmore district from this really sort of nice district. The Fillmore was pretty tough. My mother says, go 3 blocks up that way, go to the project up there and go see your cousins and tell this to your aunt. And so I'm walking up there, and then as I get like I don't know, mid block, I'm hearing this music. As closer I get to my aunts, I'm hearing this music. Closer I get, I'm hearing this music. And then when they lived up on the third floor, and I could just see at the bottom of the steps, as I was coming up the steps, all the way up to the 3 stories was nothing but girls dancing in the hallways. Now my aunt opened the door, and all my cousins were playing, and I was like, there is a God. I'm home. So of course my cousin said, no man, you can't play with us. You don't know how to play. You got to stand. You got to carry the equipment for it. So I carried equipment for a year.
So you
Then one
basically
of my
got to be
cousins,
like a stagehand or a roadie for them?
you better believe it.
Oh man,
and,
that's
and
exciting though.
then my cousin, my oldest cousin, turned professional. He played on a big hit record called record by a guy named Roger Collins out of the Bay Area named "She's Looking Good." It's a great record. In fact, it was covered by Howlin' Wolf. And so my cousin went on the road, and I took his place. And but my mom had made me go to a teacher for that year that I wasn't playing. So when I got in the group, I was pretty much ahead of everybody because I knew my scales. I knew what key. The guys didn't even know what key they were playing in. Tune up. I knew a little bit of stuff. And so it was a good addition.
Yeah. That's so one thing that kind of like stood out to me that you mentioned is when you're picking like instruments. When I was probably around 8 or 9, we had to do the same thing. I wanted to play music. I didn't really care what I was playing, as long as I was participating. And I remember it being down to a trumpet or a saxophone, because we couldn't play the guitar, it wouldn't let us. And then you couldn't take like any percussion equipment back home because they were not going to let you. So it came down to like
Hmm.
trumpet or guitar, or sorry, trumpet or saxophone. And I ended up going with the trumpet because of Armstrong. Because my dad, I was having this conversation with my dad, and He's like, well, let's listen to a little bit of each. And I remember hearing Armstrong play, and I'm like, yeah, I want to play the trumpet. And then that's how I ended up getting started. But I remember very specifically, they were adamant, do not damage this thing. I'm like, okay.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and that had to be a little while because it's very far in between that you're going to find schools that do anything with instruments now. I mean, we're always doing benefits to get instruments in schools now.
Well, they're always getting like their budget slashed, and it's
Yeah,
upsetting.
yeah, and the big budgets go to the jocks.
Yes, that is completely accurate. I don't know, man. I Some of my favorite parts of childhood were participating in an orchestra. A lot of
Yeah,
people I met, very clever, very smart, very talented, and seeing what they're doing now, they'll do, I don't know, either busking or playing like indie shows. And I don't think that would have really happened if they didn't start off as young as they did. Well, I mean, maybe. But I don't think if they weren't put in that environment, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's it's sort of I don't know how to put it other than to put it. It's sort of a shame that the arts and things of this nature is sort of political now because back in the day you could be into arts and it was just as important as sports. But now it's with all the Title Ones and all these things for sports and the big money that sports brings, $1 billion to a school or this or that or the other. Um, and it's well the music programs are not bringing anything, and then your music program, what it does is gives a person something that I think that sports doesn't. It gives them number one, um, independent thought, real independent thought, and it also gives them a path to creativity. But in my humble way of thinking, it also how many violin players or great singers or guitar players do you know running out shooting people? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, how many failed jocks do you know that have all these beating up their wife cases and this and that and the others? It's a different way of thinking. And I think, okay, I guess it's a place for both, but in my estimation, my humble estimation, I think I love that quote from from not Shakespeare from Winston Churchill. Where one of the big generals comes in and he says, we're, things are going bad and everything's going bad and and they're stealing the art, but so what? We're going to lose this and that and the other. We're going to lose this and that and the other. And Churchill just turns to him and says, if we ain't fighting for art, what the we fighting for? Yeah, are we really fighting for the next soccer team? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the
Or are we
things
fighting for that? Or are we fighting for that Mona Lisa up on the wall?
yeah, yeah.
Or that Van Gogh?
Yeah, one of the things that you kind of brought up with, like, yeah, I actually can't think of an instance of anybody that I grew up with who plays music doing really anything too bad. Uh, but there is like a couple stories that I could, well, not, I'm not gonna say stories. There's a couple people that I know who jocked big time, football, track, and I think, like basketball. And that was like their whole thing. Didn't really pan out with college, so they became police, and I've encountered them a few times, and they are a little aggressive. It's a little odd, and I'm not saying that about like police in general. I'm just saying them specifically. It's
Well,
it's
it's
just odd.
it's the culture.
Yeah.
It's the culture within that profession. I mean, let's face it. Police got to wake up in the morning and see the worst of the worst every day of the year.
Right.
That's got to affect you. It's like being a prison guard. It's got to affect you. When you are playing music and you see 3, 4 thousand people having a good time, holding hands, singing together, I mean, that's got to affect you too.
Yeah.
So it's like you say, it's sort of apples and oranges, but in reality, I'll go with the apples 7 days a week.
Yeah, and I mean, like, hey. Just if they ever hear something like this, thank you guys for not giving me a ticket. I appreciate it. Uh, it's just I don't know. It's like it's kind of weird to think about. And then a lot of my musician friends, they've genuinely are fairly happy people, and I think it's exactly what you kind of talked about. If you're in a room with a bunch of people who are kind of giving you the thumbs up and really down with your vibe, then you're probably just going to be a happy person.
Yeah, and it's nothing like making people happy. It's nothing. I mean, I mean, you could just pick any picture. You can pick a picture of Pete Seeger, and they got him at a college campus, and all these college kids sitting there, and then there's the audio, and they're singing together, and he always made people sing together. I mean, there is nothing like getting a bunch of people to sing together. It is scientific knowledge. If you sing to a baby in the womb, the baby will love it. If go get a Malamute, get a Siberian Husky, start
Yeah.
singing, and they're going to start howling, and they're going to want to sing all day. When I get up in the morning, I go outside and I hear the same bird singing to me, and I sing right back to the bird, and we sing for like 20 minutes. I'm serious. It's the darndest thing in the world. If I sing, I can, my cat feels better. Dog feels better. It's just a different type of thing. And not knocking, Steph Curry or anybody. I mean, like, hey, God bless you. Good things when you do good works with all that money. But I mean, I personally, I do feel that music and the arts are. They don't call it humanities for nothing.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think it's a little upsetting that that's kind of the way things are going, but hopefully we see some sort of resurgence. There's a lot of philanthropic, I can't even pronounce, a lot of philanthropy efforts to kind of bring awareness. So it's always good to see that coming around. Like I see a lot of major bands kind of step in to do stuff at elementary schools or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of organizations. I mean, I was part of the Thelonious Monk Institute. We did scholarships for people. I'm still part of the Buddy Holly Educational Fund. We do a lot of stuff there. We're doing some good stuff there. I'm started the Basil Charles Fund in Mystique and here in Mick Jagger. We do a lot of good stuff there. I mean, I do a lot of stuff to try to get instruments and get that sort of uh, uh, give a young person the opportunity to experience it other than just vicariously sing it on some show like American Idol where it's a competition. We don't want to make it that. It has never been about that.
Right.
God bless that, but it's not. It's definitely not that. Any hero that you have, can you see Bob Dylan on American Idol? Can you see them judging Bob Dylan? Well, don't you have another lyric upon what's once upon a time you threw up? What does that mean? Can you see him saying
Yeah.
to the Beatles, don't you have another lyric other than yeah, yeah, yeah? Hey, another one. Hey, you with the guitar. What does excuse me while I kiss the sky mean? You know what I mean? So I mean, none of those people were jocks. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
None of them were jocks.
So what are some like events or things that you would do with these organizations? Like you mentioned the Buddy Holly thing. So what are some things that you guys do?
Well, with the Buddy Holly Educational Fund, we do songwriting workshops, and some of the people that have come out of the songwriting workshops have went on to do real good. One of the young men is performing at Glastonbury coming up here. Youngblood, he was part of it.
Excellent.
Young, yeah, and with the Mystique charities, what him and Mick does. I mean, I've done that for 13 years, and that's to help young people with their education and all that. And we've seen a lot of young people pay their tuitions and their school books and what have you, and diabetes awareness. Also, with the Thelonious Monk Institute, we put people through their studies. The Monk Institute is gone now. Now it's called the Herbie Hancock Institute, but it was the Monk Institute where everybody was involved. B.B. King when he was alive, Bono, you name it. We were all involved. You name it, and we all worked with young people and did shows to help do. Whereas Herbie and sometimes Branford Marcellus would give workshops. I did workshops, and this is the type of stuff that we did. And I worked with a lot of people. You know, Wavy Gravy with the Hog Farm in San Francisco, Mimi Farina and Bread and Roses taking music into the prisons and where people are incarcerated. All this stuff, you know, it all helps.
Right. Uh, Man, that's excellent, man. I wish I had that when I was growing up because I don't know, we just never kind of got that type of exposure, unfortunately.
Uh, I know what you mean.
So, a little bit of a transition. In 1968, you formed a friendship with Mike Bloomfield, a founding member of the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and you roomed with him for quite a while. And one thing that you said, this is in the same interview, Blue Blast, uh, said he instilled in you that blues is far more than a series of notes. That in fact, it's the expression of the human condition. Can you explain what that means?
Well, you know, Michael he was a bridge. He was a bridge from the older blues guys like Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, who he could go to their homes. He interviewed them. He broke bread with them.
He was like a
You know, this is a
protege of
rich,
them, wasn't he?
yeah. But then you say, you know, but he's a rich Jewish kid spending time with these old guys from Mississippi. You know, he wanted to play that style of music. He didn't want to play, you know, uh, no disrespect. He didn't want to play like the Monkees or the Beatles. He wanted to play, you know, the blues. And so the older guys respected him enough to take him under his wing. Well, you know, they taught him, you know, of the conditions that the blues came out of. And Michael got it. You know, he got it. He understood. You know, even though he didn't come out of the conditions because his father was a millionaire.
Right.
And so for Michael didn't renounce his family or his father, but he just left that and did nothing but the music. And so when he became friends with me, you know, he was like, Joe, you know, this is, you know, I know you know, but this here ain't about notes. You know, this is, you know, and you ain't got to tell me, Michael. You know, my father lived it. You know, I mean, it was, you know, blues was a social was is a study in survival. It was a way how to make a way when there was no way. You know, case in point. I mean, hey, someone like Little Richard would make a record and the next week, you know, the record company would hold the record up and give it to Pat Boone. Pat Boone would go sell a million records of something Little Richard was just killing. All the kids loved it, every color of the rainbow. And so Little Richard said, well, the parents felt better having Pat Boone's copy of Tutti Frutti, not knowing what it really meant. If they did, they would have never bought it. And the kids, Richard said, the kids would take his record and put it under the pillow or under the under the thing,
Yeah, yeah.
But that really, whereas Pat Boone can make millions and millions and millions of dollars for capitalizing on Little Richard's, what he had to go through being a gay man in the 50s and carving that fantastic style that he had and all that stuff. Just know that someone like a Pat Boone could come on and just capitalize on it and not have to go through any of the hardships of it, any of the rejections, any of it. Just go in, like we say, some people pay dues. Some people get their dues paid for them. Well, Pat Boone has dues paid for him.
Yeah, I mean, right on. I was watching this movie. I think it's called like The Green Book, and that's about Don Shirley and his I don't want to say bodyguard, but sort of like his driver and very close friend Tony Lips. And one of the things they explored in the movie is he was not accepted really by black people or white people because of his mannerisms. And then later on, we come to find out that he's gay and he gets caught. And yeah, it's just like it's a totally like in the movie they were very soft about it, but just when you do some outside research, it was to put it extremely lightly, it was a hostile environment for people like that. And it's just like I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
but
like it's hard to think about because I didn't grow up in that. You know what I mean? Like I was born in the '90s. We were pretty. It wasn't common, but
well, I think with Green Book, it was more to a thing. It wasn't so much that black people didn't like classical music. You know, it's just that classical music didn't like black people. You know, Nina Simone was accepted to Juilliard. She was giving a concert. She was the top of her class.
hmm,
They at her recital, which all the professors made her give the top recital. They said, "Well, it's okay. We're going to have your parents sit in the back," and she refused. So during the course of that, they said, well, either you go along with this or you get out of Juilliard. And Nina Simone left Juilliard. So I would say that, you know, if some of the people who knew, you know, the guy from the Green Book, they were accepted. If classical music accepted them, of course, because I know a lot of people. You know, I like classical music. I love opera. You know, but when I was coming up in 1962, you know, my odds of being an opera star were far and in between.
right,
You know, but Bloomfield's odds of being a blues star was all good. Well, you know, there it is right there in a nutshell, right?
right,
There it is.
yeah.
You know, so I mean, but be that as it may, I mean, the gentleman was gay, and you know, America was not. Still ain't ready for gay people. I'm sorry.
I
It just
I
seems
agree.
like
I agree with you on that
you
one.
know, and I won't say I will not say complete America, but you know, I mean, we're living in a very interesting times, as they say.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with that. So one of the things, and this is a totally different topic. Uh, how do you feel about songs gathering around the guitar in modern music? Like, for instance, and maybe it's just a generational thing, but it felt like guitars were more supportive or equal to other instruments on a record. Uh, like like with I think Muddy Waters, harmonica, right? That was kind of the focus. But now it feels like the roles have kind of reversed to support the guitar. And don't get me wrong, I love a good guitar solo. I love hearing shredding, but it's sort of kind of I don't want to say evolved, changed, altered the genre a bit, and we have no shortage of shredding or guitar oriented blues music. Is this something that you've kind of noticed coming up from you said 62 up until now?
Well, right now, you know, it's it, popular music in general goes sort of, you know, what's the latest greatest thing, and you know, guitar has sort of always been prominent in guitar, but I think what you're saying is that when you heard like a Muddy Waters or a B.B. King record or an old Ike Turner record or even an old Beatles record, the um, guitar was subordinate to the song. In other words, the guitar had a little solo in the middle. You got in, you made your point, and you got out. What happened was, you know, and I can say from my Bay Area where I'm from, it's sort of we sort of the culprits with guys around the corner who lived around the corner. With guys like the Dead and everybody when they were doing jamming with something that jazz guys has been doing anyway. But you know, a lot of the jazz guys were coming and playing in the Bay Area with a lot of the rock guys. And so what happened was you sort of had a little bleed over. So what they were doing, there was no such word as jam bands back then in San Francisco. Didn't exist. No such beach. No such expression. What it was guys that were trying to figure out what they were doing, and they just took a long time doing it on stage. They just stretched. We called it stretching out. So what happened was, but they were doing that for a purpose. They weren't doing it. They did have songs. I think what you're saying now is that to a big degree, um, a lot of it now is, you know, sing two verses, a maybe a, a 36 bar guitar solo, and one verse and out. And the first verse is I lost my baby. The second verse is I got to find my baby. The last verse is I found my baby. And what you're saying is something that gets said a lot. Is you got a lot of great young guitar players. Where are the songs that are memorable? Because my point is, and somebody told me this a long time ago, Joe, nobody goes home humming a guitar solo. They go home humming a melody, or they go home humming a hook. Now there are guitar players that you can hum their guitar solos. Buddy Holly being one. A lot of the soul players, Jimi Hendrix, you can hum a little bit of his guitar solos,
Yeah.
but really, I think a little bit of what you're saying is, when people always come to me and say, guys are shredding, and so and so's just a good shredder, and I always just say, it's great. Where's the song? Where is the song? I want to hear the song. I don't want to hear a shell for a guitar solo, because in guitar solos, it's really not. After a while, you're repeating yourself. No matter who you are, you're repeating yourself. So the real geniuses like Chuck Berry and B.B. King or Albert King, people like that were geniuses because they didn't play much. They could put the same guitar solo every time and get the same response, whether they were in Paris, Texas, or Paris, France. B.B. played 6 notes. Albert King 3 notes, but he bent them 300 ways. The same guitar solo would get the same response all over the world. To me, that's genius.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree, especially with how available music is now. You could find it on like Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, whatever. There's really no vetting. Like back then, it'd be, I guess, like a studio. It'd be like, we'll put your stuff out, uh, if we like it or if it's good or whatever. But now anybody can do it. It's there's no middleman to vet that stuff anymore, and it's interesting. I, it's good and bad in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it's a different generation, and people are very impressed by so-called shredding, and God bless it, but I'm really more impressed by a song. I just I tell you, to me the anti-shredding success of all times, who is just got to go down in history, and to learn, if you really want to learn how to be yourself, was Kurt Cobain, the anti-shredder of all times. And you know what? I can tell you 2 or 3 Kurt Cobain songs. I can't tell you one from some of the people that are shredding now. I'm sorry, I can't. I cannot tell you a Steve Vai song. I'm sure, and he's a nice guy. I cannot tell you a Joe Bonamassa song. I've seen in the paper Battle of John Henry, but when I see him play it, I wouldn't know if he's playing the same solo from that as he plays in another, in all the other covers that he does. There's some great covers, and I'm not knocking it. I mean, more power to him. God, I don't denigrate anybody's success, but I prefer to hear "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah,
I,
I am too. I agree with you.
I was listening to it yesterday, and just you can hear so much. He covers so much ground in it. He covers frustration, angst. I'm pissed off. I'm mad. And you don't know what I'm saying. You know.
Yeah. I mean, he does the
It's
same
so
thing in
cool.
interviews. It's like he's sort of like very relaxed group. They're talking about just this sort of it's like they're speaking in riddles on purpose just to show how not serious everything is. And but then they go into their music and they talk about some serious subjects, which I think is honestly a great approach. It's kind of draws me in.
Well,
That's what drew me in the first time.
it worked for him until it didn't work.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah,
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
that's okay. No.
So on June 24th, you're playing at Summers Point as part of the Summers Point Beach Concert Series. They do that all summer long. I believe it goes from like June 17th to September 9th, but yours is Friday, the 24th.
Yeah, this
Additionally,
Friday.
yep. Additionally, you have your entire summer booked with a bunch of shows. What type of songs could we be expecting from this show? If you're willing to talk about it. If it's a surprise, it's a surprise.
gonna do some songs from the last 29 records, a few of them, and then I'm gonna. We're working on. I just recorded one record. I gotta go. In fact, I'll leave that gig after that gig the next day to LA to finish working on this record that I'm doing now, which is all original stuff.
Mm.
And except I'm writing some with a few songwriting partners and producer, and we'll be playing some songs from another project that I'm doing with a jam band from San Francisco guy.
Oh, you're
So
gonna be stretching out with them, right?
a little bit, a little bit.
Well, that sounds incredible. So with your summer, obviously it's all booked, and you got a bunch of shows. What are some of the places you're gonna be playing at?
Well, I'm going to be in Lubbock, Texas on August the 6th with doing a big thing with the Buddy Holly Foundation, a celebration of Buddy, me and Peter Frampton. It's his last American show. I think he's retiring. Dwayne Eddy's the host. Steve Cropper from Booker T and MGs, Albert Lee, and a few other people. And I'm going to be doing some things. My tour and going to play at festivals in Michigan, Indiana. I'm going to my hometown, San Francisco, for the San Francisco Jazz Festival, a show, a double bill with another act. Then I'm going to be flying off to Ottawa for some stuff. Then I'm coming back home. Then I'm going back out again. I can't remember everything by heart. And then January, December will slow down a little bit, but I'm going to be doing some more stuff in October. I'm playing up for the also for the Abenaki Indian tribe. I play there for the Abenaki people,
Mm.
for the Indigenous Peoples a Day's Rock, and I'll be doing some more stuff also. I do believe with another Indigenous tribe that I work with, and we're doing some more benefits. And trying to finish this record and working on some other projects, and trying to stay busy and enjoy myself.
Okay, yeah. Hey, I mean, and for people who are interested, where could they find your music?
You can find Joe Louis Walker music on all the platforms: Spotify, Amazon, eBay, everywhere. You can go to joelouiswalker.com also. But I've this will be my 30th record, so it's a lot of different albums of mine and different records that I've made with other people. Like you said, I did a couple with BB and a couple with James Cotton and different people, all kind of stuff, all kind of stuff. So there's all kind of different uh, musical stuff that I'm involved in, and it's pretty interesting.
Okay. And do you have any sort of set date or a timeline for when that new record's coming out?
No, I think they're going to let a single out sometime this year and let the record out hopefully the first quarter of next year before summertime, so I could go. I'm not thinking I go back overseas next year.
Right on, man. I mean, I'm gonna look forward to it. Whenever it drops. I'm gonna give it a listen. This has been a really good
Definitely.
learning experience because I got to experience a lot of your music because the guys at the radio show, my managers, they're like, hey, here are some albums, go check it out, and then I check them all out, and I mean, I'm a fan. So
Well, thank you.
this has been an experience for me. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity.